Welcome back, Defenders. This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 49, Chimichangas and a Deadpool movie review. And we're back, and I'm back, and after 2 weeks, I should say, of flying all around Barcelona, I'm finally back to my Defenders. Unfortunately, no, the guys did not kick me out. I'm back, and I'm full of chimichangas, and I'm here because I've convinced them that we're going to do a Deadpool movie review. So, first things first, those of you who don't know us, I'm Chris.
I'm one of your other hosts, Derek.
I'm one of your other hosts, John.
Welcome back, everybody. Yeah, great to have everybody in the same room.
Yep. It's a good one. I unfortunately have been flying for my day job, so the guys have made the most of it, and we had a fantastic guests, I hear, when I was away.
Yes. We had Claire from the Defenders podcast.
Yeah.
We had our cat for the last episode, so it was just myself and John and the cat, unfortunately.
And his bell.
Yes, but the real truth of it is that that Chris said he wouldn't come back unless he was hosting. No, joking. Only joking. No, great to have Chris back. He was on his work trip to Barcelona, the lovely, lovely country of Barcelona.
I'd agree if it was more than a city, but no, it's just a little city in Spain.
It's a city.
Okay.
But it is the capital city of Catalonia, which would want to be independent.
I see.
But enough geography lessons.
Yes, geography man.
So let's get to this, people, because I'm full of chimichangas. I know I keep saying it. It's away. Come on. It's Deadpool. I get to get away with this.
Absolutely.
You are the Deadpool expert.
I would not go that far.
I have to say from the outset, I know Deadpool, but I don't really know too much about the character. So this, not only for me was this a really good film, I have to say from my side, just briefly. I loved the swearing, the sexiness, the sassiness. I loved all that. But I was a bit on a learning journey as well, finding out about the character Deadpool.
Yeah.
So if I make any horrendous gags,
I will call you out on it.
You can slice me with a katana.
Saucy.
I will start off with one word of warning for our audience. I'm very likely to call him Daredevil. I think I've called him Daredevil about 3 times before we started recording. So if you hear Daredevil, I mean Deadpool this time, okay, for this particular episode.
And the other thing we do have to say is that Mummy Derek said that this isn't an explicit podcast, yes, and of course Deadpool has a lot of explicit stuff that does go on it. It is R-rated, but Mummy Derek doesn't want us swearing or talking nudiness on the podcast. Well, not explicit nudiness.
We will talk around it. We will not use the colourful language of one Wade Wilson in this episode, I would say. We want to ensure that everybody enjoys the podcast and able to listen to it, and we don't step over the boundaries of what might possibly be an X-rated podcast as opposed to an R-rated podcast, yeah?
Absolutely. And I think with that, remember, you can always find us on defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. Also, it's Defenders TV Podcast on any other good podcast catcher set.
Brilliant. So, for those of you out there that haven't seen Deadpool, you probably want to leave now. This is going to be spoiler-filled. We know at least one of our members of our group over on Defenders TV Podcast on Facebook unfortunately cannot see Deadpool because it's not been released in his country. So, to you, David, this is dedicated to you. It will be spoiler-filled. We'll try and go through as much of the film as we possibly can. So, if you'd never get to see it, hopefully our podcast will show you what's interesting and what's exciting about the movie.
And for you guys who actually are just tuning into us for this very first episode, we just want to tell you a bit about how this works. Pretty much, it's a simple premise. Each and every episode, each of us will take our 5 top points of an episode or the film in this case, and we'll go through it. Unfortunately, because we love a lot of the same things, they may be overlap, but we'll call it out. But either way, you'll end up with a good few nice nuggets of information. So, without further ado, should we kick off?
Absolutely. So I'll start off where I usually do, with the writers and directors of the movie. The movie Deadpool was written by the real heroes, who are Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick. They wrote Zombieland as well.
Cool.
Which is one of my favourite films of all time. I absolutely love Zombieland, and they definitely brought a lot of that kind of sensibility and humour to this film. Really enjoyed it. This movie was directed by Tim Miller of absolutely nothing. He was in charge of the studio that brought you the special effects for Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And this was his first directorial debut, really. He's done a couple of short films, but this is his first big feature film. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us?
I will. Here's the synopsis for Deadpool. A former Special Forces operative turned mercenary, Wade Wilson, meets the love of his life, Vanessa, a stripper with a heart of gold. As they repeatedly hit it off, their newfound sexy love is hit by the tragic news of Wade's terminal illness. As he desperately seeks a way to cure his cancer, to be with Vanessa, he is offered a way out by a recruiter, which he accepts. At an unnamed facility, he is subjected to a rogue experiment by the mutant Ajax that leaves him scarred and disfigured, but with accelerated healing powers. On his escape, Wade adopts his alter ego, Deadpool, and sets upon revenge against Ajax, all in the name of love.
I thought you were going to end with "Stop in the Name of Love" there.
In the
Gotta be singing.
name of love, before you break my... Sorry, had to...
No, I was trying to think of the Wham song, actually, that kept playing. Guilty, I've got no reason.
Never Gonna Dance Again?
Yeah.
Is that the name of the song?
I think
never
so.
tell that.
Is
Never
that the
tell
one
that.
in the film? I think
It is the one in the film, definitely, but I cannot remember the name of the song. It's not Different Corner. It's one of George Michael's first singles, really, with Wham. So, yes. Anyway, what did you think, guys? How will we start this off? Overall, Chris, we mentioned on our last podcast, we have no idea of your thoughts of the film. As we'd call you our Deadpool fan, you've been looking forward to this film ever since it was announced and told us to put it on the schedule. We were definitely going to be watching it and recording about it. Do you want to tell us what you thought overall of the film?
Okay. I'm gonna use big words so that I don't get slapped with a warning for rating this. But so the atrocity that was Wolverine X-Men's Origins, where they take the merc at the mouth and they actually sewed it shut, was just an abomination. I'm putting it like Wolverine X-Men's Origins has some redeeming qualities, but overall it was meh. I think most people will agree with me.
Absolutely.
It took away everything that was Deadpool, aside from the snide Wade Wilson / Ryan Reynolds at the beginning, the quirkiness, that kind of thing. That was the fun part. And then,
yes, it was one of the best things about the film, and then they sewed
yes,
it.
exactly, and it was just so weird. But like, okay, they could have eviscerated him, incinerated him, decapitated him, but Deadpool will always keep on coming, as we saw with this film. He cut off his hand. It was brilliant. It was just, I am so glad that I believe it was Ryan Reynolds' grandmother may have leaked the trailer, as he said, or also there's many theories. Could be Tim Miller, it could be anyone. But from the moment I saw that, I don't know what do we call it, B-roll footage, test footage.
Test footage, wasn't it? Yeah.
As soon as I saw it, they had distilled what was Deadpool. Fourth wall breaking, stupid, wacky humor, over the top gore. Probably over the top is the wrong word. Yes, this film has some flaws, but in a world where we've been getting nothing but superhero origins nonstop and very PG-13 superheroes, this is just a complete step away. This was the Marvel Max film we always wanted as kids, growing up when we were reading Marvel Max. Okay, Jessica Jones has the deep, gritty film noir Max side. Daredevil is the more action-packed, deep, depressing side. This is the humorous, violent, over-the-top action, knows it's a comic book film and doesn't care.
Big time, yeah.
And they took the risk where they have a leading man who is full of charisma and he owns that role, and they added in some new people, like that, I don't know, we'll call it the moody teen and the British villain. But they while not all of them hit, the culmination is just brilliant. I honestly think this for me is, I hate to say it, is probably the beginning of a new type of superhero film that we'll get now. It's the old, like, as soon as, we're recording this a few weeks in, and ever since it's come out, I think every weekend since it's released, Deadpool has beaten the box office. Everyone is fully aware of now what this is. This is, you can have fornication, you can have swearing, you can put humor and violence into a film, a comic book superhero film, and everyone over 18 who ever grew up with a comic will love it. And anyone who hasn't will be introduced. I know, and I get over the top with this, but it's brilliant. It was well written. It was amazingly put together.
I absolutely agree. I completely agree. Like, for me, this was not for all the family, and thank God for that. It's like, for once, there's a movie being put out that doesn't always have to consider the bottom line, which normally is children. And it's not that I'm having a go, obviously, at family entertainment, but there is so much of that, and
we watch a lot of
many films are tailored to getting it in under an R rating, that for a movie to essentially stick its head above the parapet and go, we're an R-rated movie, we're out and proud about that, we're gonna have swearing, we're gonna have sexy butt cheeks in a blanket, we're gonna have just uber violence, well written, a really nice kind of, when I say a messy structure, I don't mean it in a bad way. I just mean the fact that it moved from one place to another. It came back on itself. It was really just engaging all the way through. And like, you've heard now Batman v Superman saying they're going to do an R-rated cut. You've got Wolverine saying that their next film will be R-rated. As you say, Chris, hopefully this is the start where we get some R-rated movies. I think of some of my favorite movies of all time, Silence of the Lambs, Alien, are all R-rated movies. And now you'd only get them if they're horror. And this is a really great example, I think, of an R-rated movie coming, like, face first, wham bam, thank you ma'am. And I really liked this. I liked it for what it was and what it gave me, which was just laughs aplenty, gore, and some things I just will never forget. Two in particular, actually.
It should definitely be pointed out, before we go into our actual points about the movie, it should definitely be pointed out that an R rating in the US is slightly different to an R rating in the UK and Ireland. And in the UK and Ireland, this is actually a 16s film. It's not an over 18s film. So there is still some wiggle room there. There's definitely some things that they didn't show in the film. It's actually good they didn't show everything in the film. It's not necessary. But they did stray away. This still isn't an X-rated movie in the US. This still isn't an over 18s only film. It's hit the target market perfectly. It's hit teenage boys and up, all the way to our age group, effectively. And it's paid huge dividends. As we record this, we're 2 weeks after release of the movie. It's made $600 million. It's now the third highest performing R-rated film of all time. Just right, I believe right now it's just behind Man of Steel, about to overtake it this weekend. And after that, I think it's The Passion of the Christ, which basically is impossible to beat at this stage. For a movie that cost $58 million, it's done a pretty good job. I'm delighted that we've got this type of film to see. Wasn't a huge fan of Deadpool as a character when I've read him over the years, and I'm really happy that they've created a character I can hook myself onto and watch in the cinema. Really, really enjoyed.
Restrain yourself, Chris. Restrain yourself.
Chris has tried very hard over the many, many years that I've known him to get me to like the Deadpool character, and I really haven't enjoyed the actual Deadpool books. I've liked some of the bits and pieces over time, but I'm not here as the fan. Chris is here as the fan. And as the fan, Chris, do you want to give us your first point about Deadpool 2016?
Okay, before I do, I'm going to say I gave you Daniel Way's books, the best Deadpool books ever, and you still went, it's alright. So, okay, Deadpool is for some people and not for others, and I fully agree.
True.
But just circling back before I get to my first point is, I have some worries since the news of this coming out that they said they'll do an R-rated version of Batman v Superman. That Logan, that Wolverine 3 is now going to be based on Logan, and that's going to be R-rated. I think, I don't know who said it, a really well-known director, I can't think of the life of me.
I know. It's James
that was
Gunn.
it. James Gunn came out and
Director of Guardians of the Galaxy.
He came out with this really poetic piece, which is like, don't make an R-rated film for the sake of making an R-rated film. Stay to the source material.
Exactly.
Batman v Superman should not be R-rated. Looking at Frank Miller's stuff, it could be, but like, does it have to be?
Absolutely true. Now, I will point out, because I know one of our listeners has pointed this out to me on Facebook, the rating for Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice on Blu-ray was submitted about 6 months ago, that they were going to put out an R-rated cut on Blu-ray, but they are definitely riding the wave of publicity for Deadpool's R-rated cut to get a lot of promotion about the fact that they will be coming out with an R-rated cut on Blu-ray. I don't think it's the right choice either. I want to see my Batman and Superman with everybody in the audience enjoying it. I want to have it as they're very broad characters. They appeal to a much wider audience. And I think it's a bit of a mistake to do an R-rated cut of that type. I'm going to watch it. Of course, I'm an adult. Of course, I want to watch the adult version of it. But I don't know what they're going to throw in there that will make it so different to the rated cut we're going to see in the cinema.
Okay. I completely agree with James Gunn. You should make the film that you're going to make, and whether that's an R-rated, whether it's then 18, say, over here, rather than 16, which is the equivalent to R-rated, or whether it's a PG or a PG-12 or whatever it might be, absolutely agree. But for so long, movies have been pared back to fit a PG rating. Yeah. What I'm saying here is that the filmmaker intended to make an R-rated movie and stuck to his guns and made an R-rated movie.
Absolutely.
And I presume that it's only come out. It's either just savvy marketing, which in fairness Deadpool has had, or it's the fact that maybe, just maybe, Fox in this instance still wanted to pare it back to have a rating that was not R. So for too long, we've had movies coming out which could have done with a bit more of an adult treatment of even just showing blood. I mean, what I'm saying is, this doesn't have to be sex crazed violence against whatever. It's that it fits the character, it fits the story, and it fits everything. And for a lot of instances, mainstream has not necessarily been deemed to be R rated or PG-16 or 16 over here. It's had to be a 12. It's had to be a 15. Yeah. And so that's, I think, all I'm saying.
Oh no, you're absolutely right. And just one little.
So I agree with what Chris is saying, but I do think that we've had the reverse of this, and I agree with James Gunn in terms of the principle. But we have had it the reverse. Oh,
absolutely. And I will make one final note on this element before we do crack on to what is a very funny film. So let's not take it down too serious a route.
I know.
But
Sex.
One of the elements that is very clear from the budget that's afforded to this film is that Fox were kind of saying, if you want your R-rated film, you make it on the smallest budget possible because we're not sinking a huge amount of money into it. They pared it back by about 8 million, I think, in the last couple of months before the film actually came out. So the makers of the film had to cut out elements that they wanted to put in just to make this the best possible movie they could make on the money, on the budget that they had. So I think the Fox guys now have all the money. They are going to be allowing them to do a lot more with the sequel, but they've proved that they're able to do it. They did a good story and were able to do it. So really good. So let's crack on to our top 5, guys. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Cool. Chris, do you want to kick us off?
To the sex violence.
Every time you say that, he's going to cut you. You know it.
Yes, Mummy Derek.
With a knife, if he doesn't stop. I'm joking.
And don't be explicit on the podcast.
Okay, so I'm going to kick things off. I want to talk. It's very quick, and it actually happens within about 2 to 3 minutes. But the opening credits of this film were brilliant. Mm-hmm. I could not be happier. They just, I suppose the best way of putting it was they poked fun at and ripped the piss out of every well-known superhero film ever. I like
Yes.
a British villain, a moody team, a fully CGI character, a gratuitous cameo, like directed by an overpaid tool. Like it was just like, and then
cool.
the part where you see like the Green Lantern wallet floating through the air. You saw what was it? Ryan Reynolds, Sexiest Man Alive on the People magazine. They really knew who they were writing for. Like, it took me a second because I didn't actually see the first one. Like, it just, cause people started I was watching the action, and then it was only that people started laughing. I was like, what the hell?
Like, it was fantastic in itself, even the slow motion fight sequence that's going on, the slow movement or the 360 degree fight sequence that's going on in the car.
Absolutely.
And you're trying to pick out what it is you're supposed to be looking at during the scene. And as you say, exactly the same in our cinema. You could start hearing the ripples of laughter through the audience as they started to notice little things in there. Once you start picking them up, really great idea to just pick up on the tropes of comic book movies. And they were right. They are all of the tropes of comic book movies. Twisted on their head.
And I think that was just these guys who, again, it was Rhett and Paul, the two writers, Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick. Like, they knew exactly what they were doing. Like, for me, this was Take a Bow, gents. This was, my God, you have done the perfect thing in that I was just expecting the usual kind of Ryan Reynolds, blah, 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 blah. I was expecting that. And then, so I now automatically phase out my, like, kind of, my attention at these, because I was taking in the fight scene, and it was brilliant. Starting on the bridge, just like with the rocking back and forth and kicking the heels and everything. It was all done in such a way that it was like, okay, now I understand. Like this, how do you say? This set the ball rolling for the whole film. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And I do love the fact that they gave themselves the title of the real heroes of the movie.
Yeah.
The writers of it gave themselves that title.
Yeah.
So they knew exactly what they were doing.
And like, you think back to Zombieland with the double tap and all of that happens in the opening sort of sequence of the movie, then it's a really nice way of just introducing the movie. It's really good.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what it did. It set up the tone, it set up the humor, it set up the action, and then it kind of did, how do you say, it pulled me back to Zombieland with the writing. The kind of, straight away it started breaking that fourth wall, which you do not do in films at the moment. And that was just, I know it's such a silly little thing, but for me that was just, it set it up so well for me. It was just like, okay, now because it was true. I was so psyched for this film from the beginning, from when it was leaked to when they announced that it fully greenlit, to the marketing, the upcoming promos, like everything about this film going up to it. I was like, oh God, they're building this up too much. I was so afraid of that. Yeah. I was like, okay, this is going to be all right. That's it. But then they got it to a point where, when I started the opening credits rolled, I was like, nope, I'm happy. Yep, they were all good. Yeah. They got the tone. And I think that's the big thing about, like, as I mentioned, the Daniel Way comic books. The whole thing about these is that they take a lot of the comic book here, the Marvel comic book universe, take themselves too seriously or are too wacky. In other words, like, so you have these huge spectrums. So you have the racism that is the X-Men part, the Avengers, which are always saving the planet, the craziness that is Squirrel Girl. And then in this far little corner, you have this kind of comic book, which I call it it's almost its own verse, because in one amazing graphic novel, Deadpool kills the whole Marvel universe, by the way. Which anyone who wants to should go read that as their opening. It's fantastic. The Daniel Way run is absolutely amazing. It's fantastic writing and everything, and it's fun. But I think that was the thing. Deadpool, the whole kind of genre of it, always knew what it was. It was a comic book. It saw what the fun part of it was, and wasn't afraid to kind of poke fun at itself. And that's how this translated for me. The opening credits were like, okay, we could just do the normal stuff. Actually, no, let's poke fun at our stars. Like, Ryan Reynolds was the producer on this.
That's right, yeah.
And for me, like, he went, okay, so I have no doubt that his he worked with the writers on this to go, okay, any chance we can, let's rip fun at these types of things. Let's rip fun of Hugh Jackman. Let's rip fun at Marvel. Let's rip fun at DC. And then apparently he said there's, now I've yet to see it, apparently there's over 100 Easter eggs / pop culture reference in this whole film.
It's your Nirvana.
Absolutely.
I think I know about 45 of them so far. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to be sitting watching this consistently when it comes out in Blu-ray. And I know it's quite a small point, but for me that was just, they knew how to set up this film. That's really what I wanted to get to.
Yeah, big time.
It just set out its stall really, really well. I will say that I was thinking coming up to this, is this going to be another Snakes on the Plane, a movie that you hear about all the time on Twitter and you hear about all the time on Facebook and all the time on social media, and then nobody gets off their arse and goes to the cinema and watches it? And I was totally blown away by 4 days in going to the cinema and the entire place being completely full out. It was in 5 screens, I think, at the time, or 4 screens that weekend, and every single screen was sold out. It's doing so well. I'm so happy that it's doing so well, but I was completely, genuinely shocked. I thought we were onto a loser here. This is not going to be a film that'll work out. So I kind of see where the Fox executives were going, we don't really want to have another Wolverine Origins on our hands where we spent 300 million and get 150 back, you know. But luckily it's worked out.
And I went
very
on
well.
Valentine's Day. I brought my other half with me, and like I didn't even use the trick marketing that they use, which I'm hoping people get to go back and see that. They set up this Deadpool love story. It was a trailer and a image, I believe. No, it wasn't a trailer. It was just the image. It was the poster.
It was the poster with True Love Never Dies.
Yes.
And I was like, I took that. And again, we were in a packed cinema, and I was looking around going, how many of these people actually were tricked to coming?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I was.
Yes, and which leads me into my first point quite nicely. Also went on Valentine's Day, and there was just a fantastic moment on the bridge in the fight sequence when Deadpool has skewered one of the people that he's looking at. He's got him held up in the air on a sword, and he turns to the camera, breaking the fourth wall for the first time, and says to the girls of the audience, my boyfriend said this was a superhero movie, but that guy in the red suit turned to that other guy into a kebab. Some of the best love stories start with a murder, he says. And it turned into a great moment in the audience as the ladies in front of me, in the row right in front of me, turned to their boyfriends and were going, you did tell me this was a superhero film. It was like as if it was all playing out so well. It's the best thing about watching a movie in the cinema that you can tell the audience is reacting to and having a great time when they're interacting with a line of dialogue that's happening on screen. And I thought that was just a great moment. I'm sure it was placed for that very reason, that it was coming out on Valentine's weekend, and the type of audience you're going to get might not necessarily go and see this film without a bit of persuasion, I suppose, from their partners. But I loved how it translated so well, breaking the fourth wall that way.
No, absolutely. And I think, like, my first point, I suppose, I might as well pick one of mine, which really moves into this, the whole thing of the love story. But, you know, props to Ryan Reynolds. He's not afraid to get his kiss off. And quite frankly, you know, it's 2 duck eggs in a blanket, or should I say 2 duck eggs in a Christmas jumper with Marina Baccarin. That was just a really good kind of scene there. Completely stole it for me, because I mean it seemed like they were behaving just kind of normally, and then it like gets up and there are those 2 duck eggs walking off towards the loo, just as well, before we get the entire bombshell that, you know, life goes along and you keep getting the gut punches, and then it's fine, and it's like, here comes the next gut punch, and he's got lung cancer. Yeah. So it's like, it just like breaks the spell of the happy times that him and Vanessa, Wade Wilson and Vanessa are having. But it's happy times with duck eggs in a Christmas jumper.
Absolutely, one of my favourite scenes in the film. It's essentially the sex holidays throughout the year. I just had some great moments, and they must have been thinking about these so long. I think the one everybody had the biggest reaction to in our audience, I'm sure the same with yours, Chris, was National Women's Day, where Wade is bent over the bed. We'll say that. I think we can get rid of that one on this podcast. Yeah,
absolutely. Good old strap on.
Yeah.
Just straight through the duck eggs, actually.
Okay, no more beer for him.
Well, we can always release an R-rated. Don't peg it back, Derek. Don't peg it back for a PG audience.
Very true. Nobody pulled my budget either. It's good. Yeah, I loved these whole scenes all the way through the holidays throughout the year. Just thought it was a really good mechanic, just showing that their relationship has worked so well and how they're getting on. And then, as you say, the gut punch of Wade's cancer coming in, which is a pretty serious storyline to take in the film. And I wasn't expecting it to go that deep or that serious. But it is Ryan Reynolds' humor that kind of keeps it going and keeps it from becoming a really difficult scene. He does have that great moment of humor where he says, I've only got cancer in the liver, lungs, prostate, and brain. All the things I can live without. Which I thought was a good little touch from Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, look, that kind of really segues into one of my points, which is just Ryan Reynolds. Like he is the sole reason. He is one of the main reasons for me that this film works. Like, actually, before this, and speaking about duck eggs, fun fact, the Deadpool costume actually had muscle layer underneath it originally, that when they were filming it, and they had to take it out and refilm because he was too muscular. Yeah,
really?
The costume was too tight on him, and it made him look overly large, and he couldn't move with the same flexibility and everything. So there you go. Fun fact, Ryan Reynolds is too muscular for over muscle like suits. Take that, Henry Cavill.
He just absolutely
Wow,
he just has the Marvel abs naturally. Apparently, it's quite interesting with Ryan Reynolds that that when he did Deadpool the first time, it's over 10 years ago. When he played Deadpool in Wolverine Origins, so he's been trying for this long to make the Deadpool film, because even he knew that first one wasn't up to scratch.
And he calls it out enough times.
Absolutely. I did hear recently that one of the reasons why it was so poor was that it was done during the writer's strike, the scriptwriter strike in America. And it was affected by it because they weren't allowed to rewrite any of the character, and Ryan Reynolds wasn't able to give any kind of input in it. It was basically, you have to film what's on the script, what's in the script, and this movie has to hit its release date effectively. So that's probably why it ended off so bad in the end, that there wasn't the ability to write in these kind of lines, which they seem to be working on all the time.
Yeah,
There's something
absolutely.
going on all the time. So but Ryan Reynolds he's the core of this film, isn't he? I think there isn't a scene without him in it, is there?
And everyone works well around him. You know, Marina Baccarin,
TJ Miller,
Ed Scarron, all the others. You know, really just work in and nicely around him, and really support him well.
Yeah, and it was just the fact that even though the way that he was the right actor for this gig is that he spends a majority of the film under heavy prosthetics and a full body costume, one or the other, and it's still him. It's still, he comes across and still owns it. It's brought to life by him. And the only thing I noticed that then, it took me a while, that they did do some subtle CGI on the mask. The eyes, every now and again, they made it shift and the kind of winks and stuff like that. It was just brilliant.
I love that touch. It really made it feel like Looney Tunes occasionally, like really adult Looney Tunes when the white eyes start moving on their own and give them their own character almost to the mask. It's not as simple as just pulling it over his face. He's got that nice bit of animation in there. Really, really good. Definitely was expecting them to pop out on stalks at some point during the film.
And then I think it's because he doesn't shut up. In my point, it's not one. It's just like he's always talking. He's like one-liners, put-downs, like when he meets TJ Miller for the first time in the well, obviously not for the first time, to the part where he's One of my favorite scenes was the very beginning when we first meet Wade, when he is still Wade, and he's going after the pizza guy.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And it was brilliant. It was just so well put together. It just showed him. He's like, I think he was going after the guy, and he goes, like, when he's going after the pawn or the prop first, and he's like, I'm going to kill you. Actually, no, I'm here for him. And I was like, oh, that's so good.
That's a great idea.
It was just, I think it just shows, like, he was able to do that. And then, as you talked about, the seasons of fornication, let's call it that. It showed every part of him. And then even when the cancer hits him, it was just, for me, this is why I right now love Ryan Reynolds. I think possibly more than my girlfriend. I have a full-on man crush. I am like, he has abs stuff, like he has the Marvel abs. I want to go drinking with him now. Because I think he'd probably keep the I think Wade Wilson is him, his kind of natural state. Because I was watching him on, I think it was Jimmy Fallon or something like that, one of the interviews there.
Right.
And he's the exact same.
He has totally embodied the character without a doubt. There's stories of him during the lead up to this where he did take home one of the Deadpool costumes himself because he spent 10 years making this thing. He's going to take one. But he did put it on at Halloween and went out and started taking kids candy over that were trick-or-treating in the US and started recording little videos with them, which he eventually put up on YouTube. Have a look. But yeah, really funny that this is his version of promotion is I am him. I'll put on the suit and I'm him, you know. Really,
he didn't take it home. I think the way he said is I think he goes on and says, well, I was going to ask them, then I decided not to because they might say no. So he stole he full out stole it, and then he admitted to it, and they're all like, well, yeah, I suppose. Like, there's only 5 of them.
I think they probably will make a very special one in gold for him after this, after the amount of money he's brought in. This is definitely Ryan Reynolds' most successful film now. Clearly, like it's blowing everything out of the water that he's done in the past. So
what
he's really
are you telling me this is more successful than Green Lantern?
Yes, there's not. I don't even have to look up the figures on that one. That film bombed miserably, and everything else that he's been in, he's kind of been a background part. So yeah.
Wait, Van Wilder?
I'm so glad we've. Van Wilder. Yeah, I think that bombed too. But anyway, I'm going to crack on with my next point and take us on. My next point is the structure of the film. The simple fact that we don't start off with an origin story. We start off with a huge fight sequence on the bridge, which I believe is taken from the leaked footage, just recreated for the film. I absolutely love this concept that eventually, I think we're an hour into the film before that bridge sequence is actually finished. It starts out, they do the flashbacks, they do more flashbacks, and then some other flashbacks inside the flashbacks, and then eventually he's back on the bridge again with 2 other characters that I'm not going to name just yet because I know it's on somebody else's point. But I really love this structure because it feels like, even though it's a very small period of time that's passing, it feels like it's covering a huge amount, and really well. It gets you in the mood for a good romp and a good fun film. It shows you the violence. It shows you the most amazing sequence, with where we have the countdown of the bullets on the bridge.
That was excellent.
Absolutely brilliant. And then taking it into the background of the character so you get to know a little bit more about him. Not a huge amount, so you don't actually learn a huge amount about Wade Wilson in here, but enough that you understand where he came from, why he's here, and what he's doing. And then you get the final movement of the scene. I just thought the structure overall, really great choice. Something similar in some other films. Think, stuff like Memento, has used this kind of structure where you start off somewhere in the middle, you go back to the start, and then you head on to the end from that middle point. It's a really good idea. Really,
absolutely.
Really good.
I mean, like then to like the freeway battle, which is one of my points as well, I suppose. The whole slow-mo scheme where Deadpool is fighting in the car, and you have the cigarette lighter. Yes. I mean, oh my God, the thought of that being a red hot cigarette lighter going into the mouth. But just like exactly, it's just like it's the guy like being dragged by the car. It's the guy that's hanging out the window as the car rolls, and you're just like going, oh my god, this is brutal. Even just the guy sliding off the road sign later on, when the two X-Men, mutant X-Men are there. I love that, he was already here. Mm-hmm. That's not my fault. As he slides off from the road sign. And of course, like for me, Colossus cuffing Deadpool, and just him like hitting Colossus, like breaking both wrists, breaking his ankle, and then just that tiny hand. I was like, oh my god, it just creeped me out. It reminded me of Jeremy Beadle. And it was just like, then the whole wanking joke as well. It was just like, well, it feels bigger in that. It's just like, it was just like, oh my god, this
so
is like,
many masturbation jokes in this film.
Exactly. It was just fantastic. But yeah, I just then couldn't get Jeremy Beadle out of my head. And for those of you who don't know who Jeremy Beadle is, he was a TV presenter on ITV in the UK, and he just had a very small hand. One of his hands was normal, the other very small. And just as Deadpool's hand is growing back and he's in his apartment with is it Blind Al? Mm-hmm. It's just the little nuggety hand I just couldn't get off.
It's an actual baby's hand, isn't it?
It was just like, oh
just so
my
creepy. But
gosh.
Anyway.
It was just so disturbing.
Definitely. The many disturbing moments in this film, but that was definitely, I think, the one that creeped me out most. Chris, do you want to give us your next point?
Okie dokie. I'm going to do my next one, which is particularly just one scene, which for me, just apparently there's 18 minutes worth of it sitting on the cutting room floor.
Really?
It's the scene with TJ Miller and Ryan Reynolds when Wade Wilson and Weasel come back together and they're coming up with the name Deadpool, etc., and they're Wade takes down his hoodie, and I believe it's something along of fornication with two avocados. It did make me remind me of our avocados at law. I was like, that will happen if Matt Murdock and Foggy have a baby. Deadpool.
Oh my god!
There you go, people. Please make a meme of that and put it on our Facebook page.
Nice.
But that scene, apparently, there's 18 minutes worth of those two just literally riffing off each other, and that's going to be part of the actual Blu-ray. But for me, I love TJ Miller as a comedian. Anyway, he's my type of humor. Right. It's very crass. It's not afraid to swear, but it does it in such a humorous way. It's just fantastic. This was just like the avocados bit was the icing on the cake, but it just kept going on, and I was like, oh, they're gonna do another. Oh, it stopped. Damn it! But like, I believe it's IGN who released a piece where it's just the two of them doing them saying pieces that were cut from the film. And then they went on and oh my god, it would have been hilarious. I could have seen myself, if they had done half of that, I would have been hurting rolling around the floor. I think this, in a larger bit, is the comedic elements of this film were just spot on. Like, it never took itself too seriously. Even the marketing, where he's lying on a rug, where I remember even one of the first spots where Ryan Reynolds and the guy who plays AC Slater in Saved by the Bell.
Mario Lopez.
When Mario Lopez was like interviewing.
Why do I remember that?
I'm even more worried about that, but let's not talk about that for the moment.
Well, he was the best looking one.
Let's not remember that Squeak's now in jail. Just saying that.
He's the only one that's still got a career.
He's
in jail? Screech? Oh no, Mario Lopez.
Mario Lopez.
But the bit was where Ryan Reynolds, Mario Lopez was interviewing Ryan Reynolds, and then Deadpool comes in and beats him to death. And then he's ransoming him. It was just everything about this film, and the comedic humor to the marketing was just spot on. Mm-hmm. And I think it was just perfectly summed up in that scene where the two of them were just riffing and improvising. And that was, apparently that's what they didn't script it. It just went, okay, for the next 20 minutes, we're just going to have the camera rolling and you two talk and say what you look like. And that was it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, for me, it was just, I don't know, it could be because I'm a Daredevil fan, but because the avocados, I was just like, that was brilliant. Cheer.
Excellent. Excellent. I'd say for me, the humor probably did work. It did work really well. It was probably about 1 in every 3 jokes hit, but at the rate the jokes were going, I think I was laughing the entire movie. So if you were catching every single joke and laughing at every single one of them, you'd be weeing yourself pretty quickly. It's just constant, like the rapid fire pace of Ryan Reynolds' delivery, particularly, and then with TJ Miller, and as well with Miranda Baccarin. I can't give enough credit for Miranda Baccarin. When she's on the screen, she really does keep the pitter patter up with Ryan Reynolds, and is written really well and is able to do that part. Like, we watch her in Gotham every week for our Gotham TV podcast, and she's got a really good pitter patter with Ben McKenzie. They've got a good rapport between the two of them, but she's able to keep up with the best of them. Really, another great Miranda Baccarin role here. She is totally the nerd princess, isn't she? She's been in everything from Firefly to Gotham, and now in Deadpool as well.
She's one of the only actresses who crossed over. So she's now in Marvel, but she was she's Gideon in the CW universe. That's right. Computer. She's Talia al Ghul in the animated Batman universe, in Batman Bad Blood, and one of the other ones. The one with Batman and Robin, and then one of the first ones. And then
also in Gotham.
Obviously in Gotham. Yeah. But now she's gone over to the Marvel Universe. So she is the nerdvana, if you want to call it that. She was in one of our favorite ever shows that was cancelled. Praise be the Firefly.
Oh, Brown Coats Unite.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think, and you're right, she was just brilliant. Sorry, I interrupted there.
You can't not talk about Miranda Baccarin. She's absolutely brilliant. Really, really good. I'm going to crack on with my next point, which is the meeting of Wade Wilson and Vanessa. It's just, I don't know why it stood out to me. It's essentially as they're comparing their emotional scarring as children.
Yeah.
The reason it stood out to me, I'm a huge Monty Python fan, and the one particular sketch that always stood out to me from Monty Python was a sketch called The Four Yorkshiremen, where they compare how horrible their day was when they were children. And this particular scene, as they compare the emotional scarring, and it's getting worse and worse. And it also kind of reminded me of Lethal Weapon, where they're comparing the scars to each other in that film as well. But it really stood out to me that they've got this kind of really good rapport with each other. They're trying to one up each other with the most horrible stories that, if in any other film, would form, would form the villain effectively. They're essentially saying they've been abused since childhood, but using it to say which one of us is worse than the other. Thought it was fantastically put together. Really good scene. That's one of a big standout moment for me, definitely.
Yeah, no, that was cool. I mean, I just loved their relationship. Full stop. It was cool. That was another element to their pitter patter whilst they're in bed together. To the final battle scene aboard, I believe, a Shield helicarrier.
Ooh, interesting.
Or was it? So. It was really, really good. It looked like one to me, if I'm honest. But obviously, they probably can't call it a helicarrier.
100% they can't, because they asked Marvel, could they possibly use it? And Marvel said no.
So it doesn't matter. It's a Shield helicarrier.
They changed it just about enough to be
it's a Shield
look
helicarrier.
Like one, but not be a Shield helicarrier.
I mean, this is the crazy thing about rights, isn't it? It's kind of like there's rights for like stuff that is important, and then there's like. It's the Shield helicarrier. Everyone knows it is that.
Oh, it's like the Xavier School. They didn't fully call it that. No, they just said it was the school for the gifted.
I loved how they handled that as well. I have to say, just the X-Men, or should I say the lack of the X-Men, where he kind of wanders in and he goes, "Where is everyone?" And it's kind of just like, it's just Colossus and, what's it, Negasonic.
Warhead. Woohoo!
Warhead. I love just how they handled that. I thought it was really sort of cool.
Yeah, I do love how they handle that, where effectively Wade Wilson goes, why am I only seeing 2 of you X-Men every time I come to this gigantic mansion all the time? And they go, no reason. And he goes, is it because of budget? It's because of budget, to the camera. Really good. Also a great call out in the car trip over to the mansion, when he says, I wonder, am I going to see Patrick Stewart, or am I going to see McAvoy this time when I go to the mansion? Nice little call out.
That would have been so awesome. I must say, when he said that, I just suddenly, I think a little bit of pee formed in my pants, and I did kind of go, I do want Patrick Stewart to be there.
On that note, John, do you want to give us your point?
Yeah, my 7th point, I think, at this point. It's definitely Stan Lee's cameo.
Yes, of course.
In a strip bar. I'm surprised his heart didn't give out, quite frankly. But, is this the greatest Stan Lee cameo? For me, it's certainly the riskiest. And, I think he enjoyed himself looking at that. And I was kind of like, well, fair dues. It certainly beats a photo above a cop desk in Daredevil, I would say, for Stan Lee. However much I did and do like that, this, I think, bring on the dancing girls for Stan Lee. Mm-hmm. It's a great little touch to have him doing something that is not expected, like really, really cool.
Yeah, if you told me the one place that Stan Lee was going to be in this film was in a strip bar where women were walking around topless, I would have been quite surprised. It works really well. Works really well, definitely. And he's saying the kind of things you would hear in a strip club.
Completely agree. I was going to be one of my kind of slight points. I think he seemed to enjoy it. I think this is probably the most fun. Was he's 96, 97 now?
96, yeah.
Obviously, I was more afraid of his ticker now. I'm kind of going, I think he needs to go back to the Disney Marvel, because at least there they're not going to have like half-naked women prancing around in front of him. Come on.
Although he did play Hugh Hefner in one of the films, and he was being escorted by two very buxom ladies in his Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. cameo, so he does have a history of this type of character, being surrounded by women.
Oh my God. Imagine he was the one thing that threaded through all of the films. So he was one character.
There is a theory.
What? Go on.
Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
There is a theory that he was cloned, and these are all the clones that we're seeing over the course of all the rest of the films, which I love. I just think that's a really fun
It's a life
theory,
decoy model.
Essentially, life model decoy. Yeah, he's been cloned and he's been shared around the universe. There's hundreds of this one man that I'm wondering if at some point somebody will take the step and just have the joke of putting all of them side by side. I think it'd be great fun.
Oh my God, that would just be amazing.
There's the theory.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Chris, do you want to give us your next point?
I'm going to go on, far be it from me not to do my usual. I want to talk about the downs of this film. Now, we've already talked about how much we love this film, and I do. And I'm putting it out there. I love every element of this film. There was some of it that just, I think it was probably budget restrictions, timing restrictions. We know they had to do about, as you said, Fox kind of pulled away $7 million from them midway through, and had to do a lot of rewriting. So I think that's more where this comes from. But I think, okay, the first one, well, there's only two real points that I'm a bit like, meh. It was more meh. I'm not going to say down or
okay.
It's meh. Ajax / Francis.
All right.
Ed Skrein, he kind of, for me, failed to become that truly threatening, really memorable character. Since he was given so little time. I think it was more like, okay, we have a lot of haziness around the project he was working on. So we're just kind of very much led to, all we're given really is that he's kind of selling super slaves to wealthy individuals, wicked individuals. Yeah, there's no kind of story behind that. And what I'd like to know was this either going to be explained in the deleted scenes, because we know this film isn't your typical 2-hour film. It's an hour and a half, or a bit of change. Like, is this to cut it out, or is it maybe that it was written out? Like, we don't get to know particularly why the stakes are so high. He feels little more than a stooge, kind of in this part. What we do know is that Taskmaster was originally going to be in this and then was written out. I think that was because that wasn't more budget. I think that was to do with rights a bit. Yeah. But I think what we would have found was Ajax would have probably been reporting into a Taskmaster type guy. And at the end, they just made Francis the main guy. And then Gina Carano's Angel Dust. Pretty much there just to hit things. It was fantastic.
Pretty much.
It was like, but I would love to know more. We didn't know more about her.
Yeah, the villain stuff. I know we've watched a lot of Marvel TV, obviously, for our podcast. We haven't watched a huge amount of Marvel films. We just watched Age of Ultron and Ant-Man. And two of the biggest problems I think all of us had with both of those films were the villains that were on show here. Kind of shows that Fox also are not able to do villains for the Marvel movies that they have. I'll have to agree with you. I did like Ed Skrein. There were some great scenes that he had.
Oh, yeah.
But not a huge amount of detail behind them. And there's another, I will actually talk about one in a minute about Angel Dust. She had a couple of great scenes, and there's, she's a UFC fighter, isn't that right?
I believe oh my God, I wouldn't like to go anywhere near down Dark Alley, but
she was brilliant. I think she deserved the Oscar for her performance in this role. Just in case I do meet her at some point in the future. No, I totally agree with you. I think the villains did fall out the way, but I think part of that has to be the fact that Ryan Reynolds is on screen at all times, and he can't be on screen when they're setting up the villains, basically. So they probably just cut the scenes that didn't have them in them.
Probably, yeah.
Didn't have him in them. So even if they just cut them out of the script, effectively, that may have
it's time. Literally, he's in every scene and every moment of this film, and so you're only looking at the bad guys whilst he's there. So yeah, there is no real kind of build up to these. It's just he's the guy that's doing the experiments on Wade Wilson.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. Like, I definitely know what you mean there, Chris, but I did kind of quite like the pitter patter, especially when he's in the oxygen deprivation tank, and that to me was really pretty
creepy, wasn't it?
Creepy and gruesome. And I really liked how Ed Skrein like how he reacted with Wade Wilson there. I thought that was like pretty dark, and obviously just the effect then of kind of the skin like blistering and collapsing and all that was pretty gruesome as well.
Absolutely.
So like I did think he had and played some really nice parts, and again where he's stuck with the katana through the shoulder on the bridge, and obviously escaping. But I definitely know what you mean. It's whether the bad guys in Marvel stuff are that good in some cases, or aren't just tropes.
Well, I think
or something.
To spoil our coverage of Daredevil and Jessica Jones, if you haven't listened to that, pop on over to DefendersTVPodcast.com and have a listen to that coverage. But to spoil the coverage of both of those, what we've kind of realized is that if Marvel have a TV show where they're filling out a bunch of episodes, they're able to concentrate on the villain a lot more, and they're able to deal with these and turn them into really good characters. It seems like in the films they do really want to concentrate on the heroes. They want to concentrate on that side of it. And once the villain doesn't have any time to be built out, they're not as, I don't know. I don't want to make this sound like a negative against DC, but the DC villains are very quick to set up, and they do stand out really much bigger than a Marvel villains generally do. I don't know whether it's because the DC villains have been around for such a long time as well. There's a lot of backstory with them. There doesn't seem to be as much backstory with the Marvel villains. They tend to be, they go out and they do their bad deed, and then they're stopped quite quickly by the hero. Or maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe.
I think they do have a history. It's just that they're not given that in the film. And I think that in Daredevil, in Jessica Jones, they've been given that history. Whether in the case of the Kingpin, they've really been allowed to use the history that he has in the comic books to its full potential. Or in the case of Kilgrave, the Purple Man, they've actually taken a bad guy who maybe wouldn't be people's first choice, and have really fleshed out this creepy individual based on, again, treatment of him in Alias. So they've really done a great job there. And I think, obviously, film, it has to be much more focused. Yeah. And sometimes they're just not given maybe the treatment they deserve. I mean, or you have someone like Magneto, who is, everyone knows him, or even Doc Ock, say, from Spider-Man. That there's some of the characters where I thought they were treated fine. But, with Ant-Man, not everyone knows that story. And with Yellow Jacket, I'm not really au fait with that character. And so as a result, his treatment in Ant-Man was a bit kind of like stereotypical bad guy, huffing and puffing, not really doing much.
Yeah.
But I definitely get you on that, but I still think he had some good points there. So I know what you mean. It's not like a total downer.
No, it's not. I think that's the thing. It's just, they had done an extra 30 minutes in this film. If budget had have allowed, I'd say they would have gone. Because we did get that one scene without Ryan Reynolds where Ajax is there dealing the slaves to the rich oil baron, whatever. So that's where we got the motive. And I think we could have got more when the Angel Dust and Ajax are in the room and he's after being secured and he's talking to Angel Dust. I think we could have got more of that if time had have allowed. And I'll disagree with one point in that DC kind of have somewhat better villains. I think DC has better villains because we know them. Look at Man of Steel. Zod's back, Zod is your typical villain. He's a bad guy, thinks he's doing right, and then wants to tear down the world. There's not much to it. And I know you, if any of our listeners could see Derek and John's face right now, he's squirming at me.
I wouldn't say that's the definitive version of Zod in Man of Steel. I don't think anybody would. I think the definitive version of Zod is from Superman 2. And that is quite a complex character and a very different character.
Exactly, but you can't compare.
But definitely, I think in my head, and I think obviously because we do Gotham and we deal with Batman quite a lot, obviously in my head, Joker is the one that stands out to me as being, regardless of who plays the character, there's always a really interesting take available for those actors. And they've always taken a chance on doing very different versions of him because it's such a wide reaching character and a character that's been around for a long time. I do find sometimes some of the Marvel villains tend to have the same modus operandi regardless of who they're fighting. In this week's comic book, it tends to be, right, my job here is I'm Red Skull, I lead the Nazis, and we're going to go out and we're going to take this. And no matter who it is that's fighting him, whether it be the Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos or Captain America or whoever else is the hero that's taking them down, it's pretty much a similar storyline for that character.
No, I mean, I would agree. I don't think in Man of Steel, Zod is necessarily the best bad guy. But you are given some context as to why he's acting like he is by the first 20 minutes, where he's trying to essentially do a coup and this idea of, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So you get some background here. It's just simply because probably, as you say, it's an hour and a half. All we really see with Ed Skrein is that he's the guy doing the tests.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's why Deadpool goes after him. But to be honest, for me, that's all I needed to see in this film. I didn't need Ajax's backstory because that's not, I don't think, what's important about this film. This, for me, I don't really have any bad points about this film. I'm sure that if any other time or any other reason I would have watched this, I probably would have pulled out bad points. Absolutely. I'm not saying it's a perfect film, but for me, this was just, it kind of washed towards me and I laughed. I enjoyed the fight scenes. It was that kind of movie for me.
Absolutely. It was just fun.
I could take and leave things that weren't necessarily developed because to me, this was a great fun film.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Total fun. So I think I'm going to crack on to my final point on this. The one set of characters we really haven't talked about is the X-Men that we get in this movie. Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead. I have to try and get that into my head because I couldn't remember it even after coming out of the cinema. Even though Negasonic Teenage Warhead is the best named X-Men I have ever heard of, and I think Deadpool is on my side. The big character for me here is Colossus. I absolutely love this version of Colossus, and for me, it's probably the best realized X-Man on screen because I grew up watching the X-Men cartoon and Colossus in the cartoon, and much like the comics in the early 90s and throughout the 80s, Colossus is kind of that G.I. Joe character who kind of tells you what the moral of the story is. And even though he's a big guy and can punch through walls, he's always trying to be the moral center of the X-Men. Yeah. And I just love the touch that he's trying to be a moral center to the least moral character in the Marvel universe. If they had the choice of every single X-Men, if budget allowed, and they could have brought in every single X-Men, they couldn't have chose a better foil for Wade Wilson than Colossus in this film. I love the interplay with this character all the way throughout the film. I love that he's mentoring a younger X-Men in Negasonic Teenage Warhead. I love that there's a great moment in a fight scene with Angel Dust, which is the moment I mentioned earlier on, where she is fighting around in her tiny little skimpy top, and the top falls off. He politely picks it up and tells her that she's got a boob exposed, as he would, because he's a lovely gentleman. And then they crack back into their fight afterwards. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And of course, the final moment as he's giving his rousing speech to Deadpool and telling him you can turn your back on the life you've had and join the X-Men if you want to. And Deadpool takes the shot and takes out Ajax with a bullet to the head. I think it's fantastic. And without Colossus, I think the movie would have lost something. I don't know. I don't know what your feelings are on that.
Overall, I like the character. I wouldn't say I was such a fan of the 90s TV show. I was a fan of the 90s TV show, not just not Colossus' character. I'm much more of a Nightcrawler-esque Rogue Gambit style. I like my Cajuns. But I don't know what it was, but the CGI just some of Colossus somewhat felt off half the time. I'm nitpicking for the sake of nitpicking, I think, because I don't like to say this was one of the best films ever created.
You're allowed to say that if you want to.
I think it's now up in my top 10. It's probably top 5 films, I'll be honest. I think they could have done more with him. I know there was a lot of back and forth. I know the original character who played Colossus in the original X-Men films, he backed out.
That's right. Daniel Cudmore decided that he wasn't going to play this part because he thought the movie was going to be a failure.
Yep.
Oh, he's probably crying himself to sleep.
I'd say so. But then they got 2 actors now. They got one to play the voice and one as a stunt double or body double. And then they just CGI'd the body double, like they wrapped him in blue. I loved the character. I think you're right. He brought in the family friendliness, the mentor element, the trying to get Wade back on track. And it was great. He was great for a character point of view, and he was great at the end, especially with Angel Dust and when her female parts pop out. Like, it was brilliant. That made me laugh. It actually made me laugh more when he runs after Angel Dust and then gets hit, and then it was Negasonic Teenage Warhead that has to knock her down. That was even better. Yeah. Wait, let her finish her tweet. That's brilliant.
His poor wife.
Yeah. But that was just, for me, I think it was just the CGI that kind of pulled me out of it slightly in a film that's not very much CGI'd. But well,
apart from the flying body parts.
Of course. But I think they spent more time on that. I think it was just every now and again, I don't know what it is. I've seen other people complain about this, and I'm trying to think that I haven't been jarred to it. But it was, apparently, if you splice the film very slowly, you can see that some of the CGI isn't as well finished as the others. So, I'm like going...
And that's probably going to happen on the budget they had. Like, $58 million isn't a huge amount for this type of film. I will say there was a moment or two that I thought there was a guy wearing a big metal suit. That it's not that the CGI was that good, it's that it felt like it was really sitting in place for a bit too long. It wasn't moving naturally, if you know what I mean. But again, I was laughing too hard most of the way through this film to take note of a couple of these things. So yeah, I think I'm also nitpicking a little bit. But yeah, for me, I think the character was the perfect foil, and like to see him in there. Really, really good. And just a little note on Negasonic Teenage Warhead's greatest moment is really when Wade Wilson turns around to her and says, "You're all about long silences and mean comments. So which one's it going to be?" And she goes, "You got me. I've got nothing else." Yeah. Great response and a great little moment there. John, do you have a final point for us?
I do have a 10th point. It's Blind Owl. It's the blind lady. I love some of the interaction between her and Deadpool. I love the IKEA gag with the drawers. Maybe it's just a reflection of my age and the fact that I've bought so much IKEA crap. I just was like, okay, I get that. There was
you recognised every single name of every IKEA piece of furniture. I did, but it's the fact that
I just called it the Hootie Grooty or something like that, and I mean that's what it would be. But it was just
the fact of Wade having his blind roommate builds the IKEA furniture was hilarious.
Like I loved it. I loved the tiny hand conversation on the sofa with her. There was the David Beckham conversation about, well, looks are everything. Have you heard him speak? His mouth has been sexed with a can of helium or something. Like, it was just, I loved, just their whole interaction. It was just great for me. And they were kind of like just the three little points that I kind of took from that relationship. I'm sure she's way more important to Deadpool than that. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but like I just loved their kind of to and froing throughout the whole movie.
Absolutely. Like their first meeting as well was really good fun, where he's trying to wash the blood out of his white outfit, and she just goes, "Why don't you just wear red, you idiot? Then you hide the blood." It's just great, and she's the blind one, you know.
Yeah, no, I love Blind Al. They picked the perfect, for a split second, even though I knew it wasn't, I was sure that it was the woman who plays Uhura in Star Trek, Michelle Nichols. Don't know why. Just literally, I saw her and I was like, "Oh, what? They got Michelle Nichols?" And I was like, "No, but okay." No, Blind Al is brilliant in the comic books, and she's actually an integral part. They've left out one or two other characters who I would like to see, and I'll talk about one of them in a while.
There is one more in there from the comic books, isn't there?
Good.
Because I saw him and I recognised him as well. I was very impressed with myself.
But I think, Blind Out, you're right. It was the moments on the couch again was the best for me. It's like, okay, you go off now. That was just like, I was like, oh no. But I think they played it in this where she loves him or something, which was a bit weird. I'm
not sure. I think there was a great little moment of him saying, "You can go off and try and find the money in the walls, or the $200,000 worth of crack that I hid in there, and the cure for blindness." So I'm not too sure whether there was much love lost between the two of them.
But yeah, no, it was good. I really have to admit, I liked it.
Cool. And Chris, do you want to close us out with your final point? I think we're up to about 28 points, which makes up for all those times we didn't do a full top
does,
five.
And now I'm going to round out to a good 50.
Right?
Okay, I'm going to jump in with a couple of Easter eggs that I caught. Just some of the nice ones I enjoyed, but obviously there's hundreds more. Well, at least tens of 50s and 20s more, right? If there's 100 of them. You guys jump in. Okay, the first one I loved was in the scenes where Wade's dealing with the stalker pizza guy. He's wearing a t-shirt with the portrait of Bay Arthur on the front. From the Golden Girls. Yeah. Because Deadpool has an affection for Bay Arthur. So it was brilliant. I was like, oh, that's amazing.
Oh, I love it.
And did you see what the pizza boxes were called? Feige's Favorites?
No.
Yeah. For Kevin Feige.
Feige's Favorites.
I was like, that's a nice nod.
Okay.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so there were two from the beginning that I liked. And then we mentioned it when Colossus is on the bridge and he takes it and goes, "I'm going to take you to see Charles." And he goes, "Which one? McAvoy or Stewart?" That for me just was the perfect. Mwah.
A brilliant little call out to the other films, and again another fourth wall breaking moment.
We did mention the helicarrier.
Cool. Yeah, definitely.
That was perfect. Okay, it's not referenced by name, but it's anyway. A wrecked helicarrier. In my head.
No, they specifically said they tried to get the rights for it and didn't get them from Marvel, so it's not a helicarrier.
Okay, we get that, but
they have said, because they don't want to get sued, they have said it's not a helicarrier.
It takes place after either Civil War or Winter Soldier. Probably since Winter Soldier. It'd be amazing.
Doing the inverted quotes, it's not a helicarrier.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if I talked about it. The wallet at the very beginning of the show's Ryan Reynolds in his Green Lantern costume. Yeah.
The Green Lantern wallet, wasn't it?
And then, no, not yet.
Oh, get to the big one,
when
Chris.
Wade Wilson is getting the experiments done on him, did you see Marrow in the background? So there's a woman on a gurney with sprouts of bone sticking out of her. That's Marrow, who was the leader of the Morlocks in the X-Men, in the X-Men universe, or kind of first, if you want to call it that. And when later went on to become a member of the X-Men and stuff.
Oh, right. Yes. So the Morlocks, I remember, these are the ones that live under the ground.
One
They're
of
a very
them.
weird kind of race, aren't they? I think I remember that from the X-Men cartoons, you see. And she was kind of the leader of them, wasn't she, who left them and joined the X-Men for a while. Yeah, as far as I remember. God, that's going back a ways.
I'm on my penultimate one. Hugh Jackman can only be seen twice in this movie. once on the cover of the magazine.
Oh, I
and then the best one was where obviously Deadpool takes his mask off and it's Hugh Jackman's face. Yeah.
Stapled to his face. Stapled. It was brilliant. I honestly thought there was something wrong with the face makeup he had on, because of you see it from the back and it's kind of a little bit of looks like a little bit of skin is kind of peeling off. And then as it pulls around the other side, and it's just Marina Baccarin pulls off the picture from his face, and you can still see the staples in his chin and in his forehead. Fantastic. Loved the gag. He sold it completely. I wouldn't put it past Ryan Reynolds to actually have it stapled to his face, though.
Could be. The best favorite kind of mention of Wolverine for me was the mention of Pulverine. In other words, he had to have intercourse with someone in order to get this film made. It rhymes with Pulverine. I was like, oh, that's it. Because I actually saw people look and go, who? And I was like, oh my God, people, come on. And now to get to the one that is annoying Derek. The best one, when Deadpool's fighting the soldiers, at the end he recognizes one of them and goes, Bob. Da-da! The best character out of the Deadpool comics. It's Bob, Agent of Hydra.
That's right, Hydra Bob. Yes. They even mentioned that they fought alongside each other in the past, so this is definitely Hydra Bob, isn't it? So, but they just couldn't use Hydra because it's all over the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so they definitely don't get Hydra in that deal for the X-Men.
Well, if they don't get a helicarrier, they certainly don't get
Exactly.
But it was Hydra Bob. Like it was a helicarrier.
Yeah.
Oh, and here's one for any Disney fans. Apparently, and I've yet to proven, that in the hedge, as you see the Xavier School, there's a Mickey Mouse in the hedge. Mm-hmm. Apparently so. Now, I don't know if that's true or not.
Missed that one.
I only heard about this recently.
Right.
But it's, when I get kind of a Blu-ray version of this, I'll be looking out for that. Oh, and then your friendly neighborhood pool guy. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Spider-Man reference. There you go. I can keep going. Like when Weasel tells Wade, nice. Go get her tiger. Spider-Man reference with Mary Jane. Like they just filled them all. I'm like, these, the ones I've mentioned were my favorites.
Yeah, no, really good. And there's hundreds of them. But yeah, there's one every minute, really, isn't there? There's so much going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've hit all of our 5 points and probably brought in all of our notes as points, except for one tiny one that I kind of forgot to mention, which is probably my favorite exterior character outside of Colossus and outside of Deadpool. Deepinder the taxi driver is such a dark character and fantastically put together. I kind of want to see him as a Saturday Night Live sketch on his own. I love the influence that Deadpool has on this guy. He basically has a photograph of his cousin's wife. Is that right? In the car. And basically, because of the instruction of Deadpool, he kidnaps his cousin, sticks him in the back of the car, hoping to impress his cousin's wife. That's all Deadpool's fault. But I love how it's played out, and I love that it comes back later on. And the fact that he's probably going to be in prison for a long, long time after the car crash that may have injured or killed his cousin who was thrust up in the back of the car.
A really nice point. Apparently, Deepinder is named and kind of modelled after a guy that Ryan Reynolds went to school with.
Really? Who
died because lightning struck him.
Oh, right. Wow.
And he then thought this would be a really nice kind of tribute to him. Interesting. I was like, that's really cute. Except
for the fact that he's a kidnapper.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of like going, is this a joke? Did he? I don't. This is the thing with Ryan Reynolds. You just don't know. It's like, is he making this up now?
Love it. But yes, that's one of my favorite exterior characters in the movie. I think that's it for every one of the notes that I have. John, do you have any notes?
I just love the children's drawings for Have You Seen This Person? And like he holds up the children's drawing
of Francis.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Like it was just all of that was really good. Yeah, that was just one of my notes.
There is a great one actually towards the end of the movie when after he gets stabbed in the head and has the knife sticking out of his head, and Miranda Baccarin's telling him how much she loves him and is going to spend the rest of her life with him, and then you see the cartoon characters climbing up her body. I didn't realize it at the time that is because he's got a knife in his head. His brain is going mental, essentially. So he's starting to see things and hallucinate effectively because of the knife in the head. Lovely touch. Lovely touch. Chris, I know it's...
My favorite part at the end, I'm just leaving this, is the end credit scene.
Yes.
The two end credit scenes.
The skit.
The skit. Where he comes out.
Day off.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. He was mimicking the post credit scene from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes.
It was just brilliant.
I am so old that I saw that in the cinema the first time, I think. Yes, closing credit scenes was fantastic. The reference to Ferris Bueller's Day Off was excellent.
For me, it was just the best part was just like, yeah, he literally kind of go home, the movie's over. Mm-hmm. But then it cut and I was like, hold on. And then he comes back and he's now officially said that Cable's in the sequel. They hadn't confirmed the sequel at that point, and it was like, yeah, we're going to make a sequel. They forced the hand of the studio to make a sequel. And the best one is like Mel Gibson, Dolph Lundgren, or Keira Knightley. And I'm like, do anything. Yeah. I really want to see Keira Knightley in that role. I'm not people have mocked her up as this. If you go like this fan art of her as this Cable, and I'm like, that could actually work.
Brilliant.
I don't know about, but there's the guy from the army general from Avatar. He's in the running, and now he's on social media campaigning to be Cable.
That's right. I could see that too.
Yeah,
I could definitely see that. He has the look.
Yeah, no, it's going to be. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's my final point.
Excellent.
Cool.
Okay, guys. So there we go. We've wrapped up. But I want to quickly ask you, Derek. Do you defend Deadpool, the movie?
I certainly defend this film. This is one of the most fun comedy films I think I've seen in years. One of the most violent action films I think I've seen in years. One of the best comic book movies I think I've seen in years. Wasn't expecting to like it at all. I'll be 100% honest here. I was expecting that I was going to be a bit of a naysayer coming out of this film, but I enjoyed every single moment of this film overall. And I can't wait for Deadpool 2. So that's the strongest endorsement I think I can give it. I definitely defend this movie. John, do you defend Deadpool?
I do defend Deadpool. I give it a resounding 3.5 tiny hands out of 5. For me, I had no expectation going into this, and maybe I would give it 4 tiny hands actually. But this was just great fun. It's not a perfect movie, but this was great fun. I laughed and I really, really enjoyed it. I loved the adult sort of non-mainstream aspects of all of this. It was refreshing, if you want to put it in that way. Mm-hmm. So I laughed loads in this. It didn't actually bother me about the negative points that, there was a bit of dodgy CGI. Maybe some of the characters could have been sort of better contextualized within the film. But for me, this was just fun. It was fun, violent, fun, laughter, fun, tongue in cheek. It was everything that I didn't know what to expect, and it came really positive for me. Yeah. The whole experience. Really, really enjoyed it, and in fact, seen it twice. So I mean, this was a great film, and I have to say, duck eggs in a blanket. And on that note, Chris, do you defend Deadpool?
100 chimichangas, yes. It's just. As usual, I went down on the film a bit.
Oh, Wade loved that.
Oh, and of course, we banter. We go back and forth. He looks like an avocado. It's fine. For me, it was just, this was the right actors, the right script. I don't like scoring, but if I had to, it was hovering at a 9.5. If it had been given a bit more budget, if it had been given a bit more length, they could have kind of expanded out a few things. They could have done a few things better. I think this has proven that R-rated films work. It is proven that not every comic book film has to be for 12-year-olds. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to cater to the whole audience. That we, the generation of comic book lovers who've grown up with comic books, are now in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. We love the fact that we can go to these films and see what we have always wanted to see. Look at Daredevil. Look at Jessica Jones on Netflix. They've made these adult TV shows based on comic books we all loved. Ryan Reynolds is absolute star of this. He embodies the character perfectly. TJ Miller is brilliant. A British villain, the moody teen, the gratuitous cameo, the CGI character, or a fully CGI character. Fantastic. The writers, what was it, the real heroes of the film? They wrote it fantastically. And I think, Tim Miller. And I think Tim Miller, okay, yes, it's his first outing. I'm not surprised if Fox or Marvel or someone is knocking down his door right now, trying to sign him on for 2-3 films.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, he picked this perfectly. And I wouldn't be surprised. He could probably charge what he wants. And I would happily go see number 2 in an instant. And I'll happily go see any other Tim Miller films. And I'm going to leave you with this, listeners. Just imagine our 2 avocados at law had a baby, and it is Wade Wilson.
Love it. Well, thanks very much for joining us, listeners. If you want to hear our other coverage of the Marvel Netflix shows, you can join us every week over on DefendersTVPodcast.com. Currently covering Agent Carter, but very soon leading into Daredevil Season 2, which comes into our Netflix accounts on March 18th. So we'll be covering that pretty soon, but come join us over there and subscribe to the podcast on DefendersTVPodcast.com/iTunes. If you want to send us your thoughts about Deadpool or any of the TV shows that we cover, make sure you send us an email over to feedback@DefendersTVPodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter @DefendersCast, or follow us on Facebook. Join our group at Defenders TV Podcast. Really delighted you guys have been here for this one. Great to have all 3 of us back around the table again.
Yay.
Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
They only let me come out for special occasions now.
Absolutely.
Let
that's
Chris
not true.
host.
Let Chris host. Nice.
But look, thank you very much, guys, and I'll chat to you soon.
Yeah, thank you. I am your British villain, and I'm off to assemble an IKEA wardrobe with my eyes closed.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Jimmy Junkus. I'd love to know more. I want to know why. Kind of like, at the moment, he just feels like a stooge.
What was that noise, Chris?
The bus, sorry. What was it again?
Do you want to just repeat?
Jimmy Junkus.
Very soon be transitioning into Deadpool. Nope. See, look, I didn't
Yay! You didn't
get it
just
wrong for the whole podcast. I got it wrong the wrong way around.
Jimmy Junkus.
This has been a Flickering Myth Podcast Network production. For more information, head over to flickeringmyth.com for more shows like it. Find this show in iTunes by searching for the podcast name, and head over to youtube.com/Flickering Myth to subscribe to the Flickering Myth movie show. We'll see you on the next podcast. Take care. Bye bye.